Welcome everybody to Vampire Wednesday. I'm Matt Holland again, here with Matt Hyra, game designer at Renegade Games, senior game
Hello.
designer. How you doing, Matt?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well. Yeah.
Well, we've talked a little bit about Blood and Alchemy at the Elysium event, but
Yeah, that was fun. Of
people want more. They want to know more of what's
course.
coming. So
Yeah.
today we're going to show off the Thin Blood pre-constructed deck from Vampire Rivals Blood and Alchemy, that first expansion. Let
hmm
people start to ruminate on the possibilities that Thin Blood brings to the game, what they want to use at Gen Con or use as soon as that is released. Uh, what? Just give me a little elevator pitch. Thin Bloods. What's the special thing about them?
Special thing about them is total weenie strategy. So you're going to be bringing out the smallest vampires of anyone at the table, and you're hoping to overwhelm your opponents with numbers and chicanery.
Drown them in the undead.
Something like that. Yeah, the Thin Bloods are barely undead. They're mostly dead.
And they have Thin Blood Alchemy, a new discipline and kind of a
Mhm.
core concept for them.
Yeah, well, there's a discipline called Thin Blood Alchemy that's new, and they're the only clan that has it. And the one cost, the one blood potency vampires don't even have a discipline, but they can get it via alchemy cards, which we will see shortly.
Awesome. So that's basically using a little something extra, mixing it in with
Mhm.
their blood to give them those additional abilities and access to that stuff.
That's right. Yeah, the story behind the Thin Bloods is their generation away from Cain is so distant that their blood just holds no magic, just no power. So they have to mix their blood with strange chemicals and come up with their own weird concoctions to actually get any vampiric abilities out of their blood.
Cool.
Mhm.
Well, let's dive into the cards from the pre-constructed deck here. Obviously, a lot of Thin Blood specific ones. There's a couple of ones that are available in other clans or in should say neutral, I guess, as well.
Yep.
But we will pop up a look at some of the vampires here. So we've talked about Jacob Frost before. He is the sort of default leader,
Yep.
and I believe he's the highest blood potency and the only 3 blood potency.
In the pre-constructed deck,
Ah, there we go.
yes, there may be an alternate leader. Are we going to eventually show off the crypt pack? I'm
We will
guessing in
do
a
the
few
crypt pack
weeks.
in its own stream at some point
Yeah.
here into the run up to
Okay.
the
So
release.
they'll see what else is in store.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. Yeah. So this is the full range of characters here. Obviously, this isn't all of them, but they are BP 1 to 3. And so you better protect your leader if you want to keep your Haven leader ability. And
Yeah, and
the
we'll talk
good
about
thing
that
is,
leader ability is pretty
yeah,
pretty important and pretty
Mhm.
helpful. So
Yeah. The good thing about such small characters is they don't need much time in torpor to recover. You will often be able to get them back during your very next turn. So there you go.
and Jacob's ability, of course, kind of plays right.
Mhm.
We talked about it a little bit, but it plays right into that whole a lot of small bodies. The additional
Right.
damage for every 2 characters in the party,
Yep.
including that character. So very
Yep.
easy to get him up to 3 for both mental
Yeah,
or
I mean,
physical.
he's got one physical, one mental, so there's a couple options there. With just a party of 4 characters, he'll get +2. That's like easy for the Thin Bloods. You should be able to get up a party of 6 without too much trouble, and then he really shines. And keep in mind that attacker, that bonus damage when he's an attacker, that works for any attack type. So it can get pretty dangerous pretty fast.
Yeah, especially because we looked at some of those attack cards that they have access to that can synergize with that really nicely too.
Yep,
We also, I think we showed Candy
I
as
think we
the other
did.
vampire we
Yeah,
showed on the
yeah.
stream. So she's of 2 blood potency,
Uh-huh.
and if it deals damage, you're going to put that -1 blood. So that not only, correct me if I'm wrong, that not only if they are at, well, they wouldn't be at full health because they just took damage,
Right.
but
They
it'll
would not
reduce their
be.
max health and
hmm
reduce the cards they have access to play. Correct?
Right, right. I like to say, yeah, if you attack a 4 BP character at full health, you're obviously going to do them 1 damage to get that -1 BP token onto them. So you're not going to reduce their BP and blood immediately, but you're going to prevent them from mending to over their new BP of 3, and they're not going to be able to play any cards of BP 4 higher anymore either. So that's nice. And just to fill out the thought, if a -1 BP token goes onto a character at full blood, they will automatically lose 1 blood because you can't have more blood than your blood potency.
So
So
presumably there are some
yep,
ways to add those tokens
they're
other than Candy's ability.
certainly, yep. Hmm.
And that discipline that both Candy and Jacob have there is the blood alchemy discipline, the
That's
new
right.
one.
Yep. The hourglass is the thin blood alchemy. I guess the hourglass is kind of, the alchemical, maybe something in there. So that's important when you're looking at a character like Valerie Nash, because the party ability gives bonuses to characters who have thin blood alchemy. Okay, and they do. So that can give them increased blood potency plus additional disciplines. All right, so that's kind of extrapolating a little bit of what the alchemy does without having to come up with 9 different alchemy cards.
And
We're
like your
just
whole
kind of
deck is just
simulating it,
alchemies.
right?
Yeah.
Your whole deck is alchemy. We're simulating it by having these group get-togethers. If you have multiple of those 1-cost characters, they're each going to give your attacker +1 BP and a different discipline, and so you can take advantage of some attack cards that require disciplines as well that
And
wouldn't normally be something Thin Bloods had access to.
we'll see the rest of the ones here in a second, but don't all the ones have that pay 1 prestige ability? And
Right.
don't they all have a variation of the top ability with a different discipline,
They do.
essentially?
They do. Yes. Yes. They are all the same, except for the discipline that they grant to an attacker in the party. Okay. They all have the pay 1 prestige ability, and if one of them uses it, that's going to give all your 1 BP characters in your coterie +1 shield for the turn. It doesn't get used up. It's not an ablative
Yeah.
shield.
So your
So
example was you could use that both when attacked and then also later to like soak sad damage.
yeah, well, sad damage would normally be during your own turn. I think the example I gave was like
Oh,
if
you're right.
someone did a strike back, a reactive
Yes.
attack that deals damage to you, one of your 1 BP characters, you could protect them and then also, prevent some sad damage at the end of the turn. Actually, also useful if you wanted to protect a character from the Sunrise Surprise, which we'll see later. It's a card that does aggravated damage to the
Oh yeah.
acting character, and so you could pay each of your 1-cost characters can activate that ability, whether they are, doesn't matter. That's not a party ability. The pay 1 is not a party ability. It's just each of your characters do it. So you do have the ability, even if a character is not in a party that's in combat, still you can activate that because it is damage prevention. It's giving you
Sure.
shields, and that does not require the relentless keyword. Anything damage prevention related does not need to be relentless.
Nice. And then Joseph Drake. Joseph Drake's one of the 2-costers,
Yeah,
and looks like a nice defending character for each
yeah.
alchemy attached. And there are, I think, 3 different alchemies in this
There are
precon,
3 different alchemies. Yes,
so you can
indeed.
get up to 3 defense possibly.
That's right. He could very quickly get 3 shields, which is going to be very useful as a blocker. He could also do pretty well. It might sound crazy, but he's not terrible at going out claiming the prince of the city once he's got
Oh,
3 alchemies on him. Yeah, and it's not different alchemies. It's just for each alchemy. It doesn't have to be different for him. So,
okay.
yep.
Nice. Well, let's go to the next page and see a couple more vampires, and I think what our haven, our agenda. Oh no, here we go. So these are all 3
Yep.
more ones. We've talked about Wendy before.
Right.
That one, same ability,
Hmm.
kind of just different specs here and different
Yep.
disciplines granted. So Caleb gives what, blood sorcery? Is that
Caleb gives blood sorcery, yes,
nice?
which also debuts in Blood and Alchemy. So we wanted to get it in there just as a little nod in case anybody was really interested in beefing up if they want to do a thin blood Tremere deck. Why not?
Nice. And yeah, Tremere, I think we'll be talking about next week. So if you're into that, the rituals, blood sorcery, that kind of thing, make sure to
Hmm.
tune in next week.
Yep.
And then April Smith, what is April? What discipline is that?
That is fortitude.
Fortitude. Okay.
So yeah, that'll help for any defensive decks, really.
So you
Mhm.
could potentially have Jacob attacking with like 5 different disciplines or something like that, or 4 or 5
Yeah,
disciplines.
well, in the pre-constructed deck, let's just go with that, just an example. There's 4, obviously, as you've seen, there's 4 one-cost characters. If he's in a party with all 4 of them, they are each going to give him +1 BP and a different discipline, so he could easily have 5 disciplines while attacking.
That's a lot of disciplines.
It
And I
is
wonder now if there's a
because he has 1 on his own plus
yeah.
the 4 that they give. So yeah.
All right, that's kind of wild. I just think that this archetype is very interesting. The ability for these low level vampires to shield each other,
Hmm.
and as we'll see with the next slide, the action advantage that Thin Bloods have, I find very
Yeah.
interesting and kind of exciting. The recruitment drive, we've talked about that. It's pretty simple. You recruit a character, gain an agenda. So that's going to get you up to 6 of the 13 you need to win.
Right, right. Your leader is not a recruit action. That is simply put it into play as a setup. So that's important to remember that you'll be able to get up to 6 agenda this way. And then you're going to have to head out to the streets and get it the old fashioned way.
And the action advantage that I was talking about comes
Hmm.
from the pit. So the first time it's a leader ability, like you
Yep,
said, very important to keep Jacob alive. But the
right.
first time you recruit a character during each of your turns, gain an action. So you could conceivably have 4 characters on the board by the end of your first turn. No, because you
You
have to draw
could,
the
yeah.
cards. So you'll be short on cards there.
Yeah, and you would be kind of diminishing your own leader ability a little bit. So the 2 cards, there's a tension there.
True.
The recruitment drive is just like bring them in, and the pit is like, well, if you do it slow,
It's a little more efficient.
you're going to benefit more often. Now, if you're playing in a 1v1 or you quickly discover you're in a group game and 2 other people are running aggressive decks, yeah, you might want 4 characters out on turn 1 because you'll survive. You know, they can't take them all out.
Yeah. Yep. And that is a good point. But it does make the fact that you're going to need to play more vampires than another more traditional quote unquote deck makes it sting
Right.
a lot less when you're gaining these actions.
Yeah, so because the team needs that extra support in by way of having extra vampires, it would be unfair to make them to have them go at the same pace as other people without any ability to make up for it, especially because their vampires are so small. You're not getting as much use out of them in general every turn of the game, but you need those numbers, and so there needed to be a way for them to get some action recompense for all of the characters they're going to bring out. You're going to want to bring out 6 or 7 characters every time as a thin
Yeah.
blood, and so that's generally 3 or 4 more actions than other people are spending with their coteries of around 3 characters, right?
Sure.
So they needed the help, and it also is kind of a thematic thing because the thin bloods
Oh yeah.
are
I liked this touch too.
they have, yeah, they're not they can be out in the dawn light, right? They don't have to be home by 5:30 a.m. They can scoot home at 7 a.m. after feasting on a Starbucks, you know, purveyor or something like that, you know. So
Yeah, but they're not gonna be able to sleep. So,
well, that's true.
all right, let's go into the actual deck proper here, and I think these
Yeah,
first ones are our alchemy options.
probably.
Yeah, 3 of them. So,
And one extra. Okay, well, one that
calcinatio.
talks about it. Yeah, calcinatio, or it's probably calcinatio. I don't know, or calcinatio. I don't know. I think it's fixatio. I don't know.
I
forget
think
how
calcinatio. Yeah,
it could
fixatio
be. I
and
think it's
anathercorporus.
probably sounds about right. Yeah. So yeah, let's just look at those 3 now because they are the alchemy cards. Now remember that alchemy is a card type. Thin blood alchemy is a discipline. However, as you can see from these cards, they actually give the acting character Thin Blood Alchemy as well. So that is part of how you get your, if you want to get your a discipline on your 1-cost characters, that's how to do it. But this is a great way to beef up your guys. Remember, they're mixing their blood. Calcinatio is a social thing, so they're actually kind of mixing blood with other people a little bit. That's kind of what you're seeing in the art there. Fixatio is a little bit of, you know, mind magic, and then Athenor Corporis is kind of stealing blood from other people and injecting it, and that just gives you strength. So those are rough translations of what these are.
Sure.
So,
And
yeah.
so those are each a way to buff the 3 different attributes of a vampire.
That's right.
Lets you kind of build those thin bloods in the direction you want to use them. And the cool thing, again, with the action advantage, if they are played on a thin blood, you gain an action. So
That's right.
that's what's cool. You can do the play a vampire, you're still at 2 actions. Play an alchemy, you still at 2 actions. Play another alchemy, still at 2 actions.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
then go do something neat.
Right. Sometimes the thin bloods can almost run out of cards on the first turn, so that's kind of fun. Yeah, so these alchemies give them the raw attributes that are going to allow them to survive a little bit and compete a little better, because it might be difficult for them to take down a 5 BP character, but once they're set up with some alchemy and whatnot, they're going to be good to go. Now, of course, recall these are actions, so it will require you to exhaust the acting character, who's going to gain the attribute and Thin Blood Alchemy discipline, but when they come back next time, they're going to be stronger for it.
And then Far Reach, you said, sort of plays off the alchemies.
Yep.
So that is not unhosted, but you will exhaust a vampire and target a different vampire, it looks like.
That's right.
Send them into the streets on their own.
Yeah, Far Reach. It's a Thin Blood Alchemy ability. So it's you're basically, what this card does, you're dragging someone into the streets. So just straight out of their haven. There's no hiding from it. That's free. Like, you can just do that automatically.
Oh, I was reading that as you're moving your character into the streets of their own party, but that's not what it does.
No, right. It's target character. I mean, you could target your own character, but you don't need to.
This is a way to pull a target.
Yes, you pull them.
Opponent.
See, can't you see from the art? The person was yanked so hard their shoes fell off, right? So
that makes sense.
You go. Yeah.
So it's a way. This is a nice buffed attack that can't react, but you
it's not even. Well, let's just take it. Let's just piece it together. So it's an action. So one character is going to have to exhaust to do it, right? You're just going to move target character into the streets as a separate party. Okay, that's a freebie just for the action. You can be done. That's it. If all you want to do is move a character into the streets, that's a great way to do it. If there's some reason someone doesn't want to be in the streets, this is a good way to definitely piss them off. But if the acting character, the one who's playing this Far Reach card, has an alchemy attached, you can detach the alchemy from them. That's why it's in bold, right? That's an activation cost to get the effect, which is the acting character starts an attack against the target who cannot play a reaction. Now, your character could be safe in your haven still.
That was my question.
That is another benefit of it. And as this is mentioned in the rule book that comes in the expansion, if you are making that attack from within your haven, all the characters are in your party. So you don't have to separate into a separate party because you're in your haven. They're all one party automatically. The rules for separating are you separate, but in the haven, you're automatically just one anyway. So yeah, you don't actually separate when you're in the haven.
So that's nasty.
Yeah, and this is an attack. So they're already in fact, it mentioned the rules mention how it works with the attack sequence, because you're not actually starting the attack sequence from number 1. So because they're already, so it's essentially starting an attack immediately after pulling them into the streets, and they can't play a reaction. So pretty good. It's a little 1-2 punch, you could call it.
Yeah, and it has that toolbox utility too. If you just need to get somebody into the streets and don't
That's
want to
right.
pay any
Yep.
additional cost. Okay,
That's
that's
right.
pretty cool.
Mhm.
Let's go on to the next one and see some more options.
Let me mention just real quick on that far reach. Like sometimes you might have, the prince and one blocker in their haven, and you really want to attack the prince. You could pull the blocker out or pull the prince out, however you want to do it. So there's ways of using that to your advantage for sure. So
Nice.
a couple more
Let's
cards that
see.
talk
Let's
about
do
alchemy. Yeah,
envelop first because that's another detach and alchemy from the active
yeah,
character.
yeah. Yeah, this is one of their fun items here. So this is an action that you will perform with a character and detach an alchemy from them to put a -1 BP token on each character and target party in the streets. So this is really going to make someone's party a little lessened in their overall combat prowess and even blood reserves. So if you can catch a party of like 4, if you can catch a party of 4 in the streets with this, boom, you could just knock them all down a peg.
A to the J has a question about Joseph Drake. Does he only get the shields when he is being attacked, or when he is the attacker, or both? So during attacks, that to me implies that he gets the
Yeah,
shields both when attacking or being attacked.
right. During attacks, yeah, that's
Yep.
both. He doesn't get it versus SAD damage.
Yeah.
You're and I probably should have, I think I mentioned on the Elysium, and let me mention it again. So let's say that there's 4 SAD out there in the street and you're about to get walloped by them. You can pay a single prestige to give each of
Your
your,
4 1 cost vampires.
yeah, you pay once, and then all 4 of them would get +1 shields for the turn. So then you can apply 1 SAD damage to each of them. And it explains in the rules, of course, it's in the core rules, but it's reiterated because it's more important now. You can't assign more sad damage to a character than they have blood. Okay.
So
So in
even
the
if you
case,
paid 2 prestige to trigger 2 of those abilities and each had 2 shields, you
right.
still cannot apply 2 sad damage to each one.
That's right. Yep.
Cool.
If there's, yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And then Haze, nice 1 blood potency, so any of these guys can play it.
Mm-hmm.
Special reaction that looks like it negates a ranged attack
Well, you just jumped past the
or
word
a
special there.
non-attack.
Special, that's new.
Oh, okay. Special.
Yeah. So
Enlighten me.
we now have some reactions that don't necessarily have to be played during an attack. This can actually be played to negate a ranged attack or a non-attack effect targeting a character in this party. And notice that it requires just alchemy in the party to play. So, and you play it face up. So what happens is if someone declares a ranged attack against you, you can play this face up and you just say, sorry, this attack doesn't resolve. Stop the attack immediately, end the attack. Or if someone tries to
I mean, just to use a card we just saw, the yank him out
Mhm.
into the streets one. What's it called? Geez. My
Far
brain.
reach,
Far reach.
yeah.
You can use it on that.
If you are on the receiving end,
Yeah.
yes, because it is targeting a character in your party. If someone far reaches
There
you,
you go.
you could say, I have a reaction special that I can play anytime I need to. And this non-attack effect, which far reach is at its core, because it's an action, and then, yeah, you would just stop that effect. So it can also stop like coup de grace. It can stop Sonia Valentine from swapping one of your blood. Not sure that's worth it, but if you really wanted to, you could.
Sure.
Anything that's not an attack, yeah, they can just stop it if it's targeting. Has to target, so it wouldn't be useful against envelop because that's target party, not target character.
What about
Hopefully that
smoke them
makes
out?
sense. Smoke them out. That
Target
targets, I
party?
believe, it might be each character in the haven or something like that. I don't think it says target each character in the party, so I believe it would also stop smoke them out too. Yeah.
I'm looking it up on the DB. We can move on, and
Yeah, sure.
I will get the verbiage here in a second. Oh, we can go to the next page. Smoke them out. Move all characters from target haven to the streets. Deal one aggravated damage to each exhausted character. Move this way.
All right. Yeah, these are some of the attack cards that are in the Thin Blood deck. Which one did you want to start with?
Real quick, just about haze.
Oh,
That
sure.
stops targeting a character. Smoke them out targets all characters. So am I correct in that that would let you stop one character from being moved?
What is the specific wording?
Move all characters from target haven to the streets.
Yeah, see, that is not targeting a character. That's from target haven. That's not targeting a character, so you could stop a smoke him out with it.
I think you couldn't, right? Because this negates an non-attack effect targeting a character, and that is targeting a haven.
Sorry, yeah. I think I just said it backwards, right?
Yeah,
This
okay.
one, okay, right. Yes, smoke him out doesn't target a character. It only works against things that say like target character gets a -1 BP token or swap a blood on target character. Yeah, sorry.
Sure.
I said that backwards.
Yep, no worries.
Yep.
Okay, then let's go back over to the attacks, and we'll just start from the beginning, I think. Poof. All the angles.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is the one I was thinking of. All the angles.
Let's go left to right. Right. So yeah, that's a 6 BP mental attack there, which seems pretty crazy for a Thin Blood deck with where there's nobody where 3 is your highest BP. But with 3 1-cost characters in the party, you're going to get to 6 immediately.
And so, the math on that, with 3 1-cost characters, assuming no alchemy on Jacob himself,
right?
Jacob's got 1 mental. With 3 1-costers in the party, he's at +2 damage, so he's doing 3 damage. And then he's got 4 different disciplines, so he's doing 7 damage.
I think you did that correctly. Yeah.
Now that is a hefty combo. Like, you need a lot of cards to pull that off, but that is brutal. But there's a big old bold keyword on there.
There is a big old bold keyword making its debut in the Blood and Alchemy expansion. It's called superficial. When you see the word superficial, you will also find parenthetical text telling you this attack cannot reduce the target's blood below 1. So if you've got some big 6-cost guy sitting across the table from you and you want to whittle him down real fast, this is a good way to do it. You're just not going to be able to take out that final blood away from him. So let's say you attacked a 4 BP character at 4 blood and did 7 damage to them. They're going to come out of that combat with 1 blood remaining, no matter what.
Sure.
Yep.
So that also makes it not as necessary to get every single piece of the combo in there, because 7's probably overkill since you can't kill the guy.
7 anyways. Yeah. Overkill is actually the wrong word, because you're not
True.
You're always underkilling with this card.
But 7's a waste of effort for most people. Probably.
I mean, better to knock him to 1 than to 2, though, right? So
certainly. Yep. And then breakdown, that's a little bit more easier to get off. It's only a 3 blood potency, and
only a 3.
Another way to put now that's if the attacker has blood alchemy, put a -1 blood token.
Yeah, and there's no caveat here. So even if they fully defend, they're still getting that -1 BP token on them. So they're going to be down a blood no matter what at the end of this attack, but it's probably going to do a little damage while you're at it anyway. But having, stacking up, 1 or 2 -1 blood tokens on people is going to crimp their style when it comes to playing cards from, using
especially if they're trying to use some big hefty attacks that need those 5 or 6s. That can be a really big problem.
That's right.
And then Pure Pressure, a social attack. No native damage buff, but also no blood potency requirement, and that's it's basically Jacob's ability as
on a card. Yeah. Yep. So
not superficial, notably.
Not superficial. It's not doing. You probably can get. You can, as a Thin Blood deck, you can probably get +3 damage out of it, which is super great. You just got to work up to it a little bit. Yeah.
And with alchemy to buff your social, attribute if you need to.
Right.
You got some tools to get.
And notice Jacob doesn't have any social, but if you had 4 characters in the party, you're basically just doubling. You're getting you're getting +2 for peer pressure and +2
2 for
for
Jacob.
Jacob. So even though he doesn't have social, swinging for 4 with just a couple with 3 extra characters is pretty
That's
good.
kind of the fun thing about his ability to me too, is that he can attack along any of the 3 axes of attributes,
Yeah,
and even an opponent might not think, oh, social attack, but you can
that's
actually
right.
lay a pretty good one on him if you have a decent sized
Yep.
party.
Yep. Some
Uh,
people might be hesitant. They might figure, well, it's a social attack. I'm not going to worry about this. How much damage could he really do? He's got 0 social. Well, guess what? You just took 4. pretty easily. It's hard to do
uh,
less than 4 with peer pressure. Let me just put it that way.
with peer pressure and Jacob at least, right?
And Jacob, yeah.
Dangerous mixture. We did talk about this one. Elysium. That's a 5. But that one is
Yep.
+1 for each different alchemy in the party. So if you've got some of those
Right.
ones that are boosted with alchemies, that's going to potentially be a lot more damage again.
That's right. Yeah. Jacob will need only 2 one BP characters in the party to get to that 5 BP requirement. It does 1 inherent on the card. He has physical 1. You're going to have some extra characters in the party, and hopefully you have a few different alchemies in the party as well. So that can get up to 5 pretty fast as well. It's going to take setup, like we've mentioned every time. The Thin Bloods take some setup. You're gonna have to bring out 6 or 7 characters. You're gonna want to bring out a couple of alchemies. Then you're ready to go. But you've got a little extra time to do it because you're gonna earn some extra actions throughout most of your turns. At least the early turns, I should say.
Yes.
Mhm.
Awesome. Let's go to the next slide, Katie. Those of you who are tuning in, we have a different person on the back end. Instead of Desiree, say hello to Katie. Katie is our new video manager and is doing a great job of running all these streams now. So you'll see them, I'm sure, at some point. But Sunrise Surprise, Matt, you mentioned this before. We talked about it at Elysium, I believe, too.
Yeah, we did.
This is that sort of sending your little Thin Blood that can go out there at 7 a.m. to basically just hold on to somebody else as the sun comes up.
That's right. Yeah, it's got a fun caveat as the first line of text. Cannot be played during the first or second action of your turn. So you'll know when, if you've got a Sunrise Surprise in your hand, you're going to want to figure out how you can get a third action, because then you can play Sunrise Surprise during that third action. And when you do, you're going to play it in the streets. It's not an attack. It's just going to do 2 aggravated damage to the acting character, the one who's playing it, and to target character in the streets. So this is a closer. This is a way to knock somebody out. And if you there's no BP requirement on it, so a 1 BP vampire can do this. And typically you may not care by the time you're knocking someone else's good character out. You may not care if your 1 BP character dies, but if you really want to keep your guy around, you can pay
Trigger
1
the ability on
prestige
2 of the
on 2 different 1-costers, and that'll give all of your 1-costers 2 shields. And then those shields will actually also be worthwhile during the antagonist step of the end phase. So that was another time that can be useful.
Nice.
By the way, you're seeing 1 of each card here, but clearly there are 2 to 3 copies of most everything. The alchemies, there are 3 copies of each in the deck, by the way.
Yep,
And then,
I just grabbed a copy of each just to show all the cards.
To show, obviously.
Full
I just
composition varies a little.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that because of back to formula. So this is a card that will get you to those alchemies a little bit faster. If it's an action, so one of your 1 BP characters can use it real fast, and you get to reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Any alchemies that you reveal, you get to draw, but you'll discard the rest. And if you've used any of your detach alchemy abilities previously, you might have an alchemy in your discard pile. So if the 4-card search misses, well, there's a side benefit. If you draw none, put 1 alchemy from your discard pile into your hand. So
that's a cool little consolation prize.
Yeah.
You need to have a little bit of setup to make sure that you have something for it to trigger,
Right.
but
Yep.
Gives you some options.
Indeed.
Crossbow. So back to the formula. We'll mention not thin blood specifically, nor is crossbow here.
Well, back to
The-
formula does need thin blood alchemy to get it to
oh,
work.
true.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's not
not
labeled thin
Sunrise
blood, but
Surprise,
it's
right? Sunrise Surprise doesn't have a discipline requirement, but it does have the thin blood. You have to control a thin blood to be able to use it. Same goes for the alchemy cards, by the way, right?
yes.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that specifically. All right.
And the crossbow is your ranged attack in this precon deck. So it's got one
Yeah.
native damage.
Yep.
You discard a card, and it basically it's. I think we talked about this on Elysium. You're like shooting that bolt, and it's sticking in them,
It's a
and
thorn in their side
not only blocks an
until
attachment slot, but also blocks mending.
that's right. It can block, yeah, block an attachment slot. So, they may not be able to get that extra citizen or even a title if they've been getting a bunch of retainers or whatnot. And yeah, this character, the one that you're attaching it to, cannot mend during their end phase. That means you're not going to be able to discard a card to mend one on that character until, of course, it until it goes to torpor, in which case the crossbow would be removed along with everything except titles and
And you
such.
can still use like your emergency blood bags, things like that, or other
Emergency blood
abilities
bag,
during turns.
mercy,
Various vampires
yeah,
have mending abilities too.
right. Some of the fortitude abilities, yeah, there's a few, yeah, Doc, Yusuf, all those will still work.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then out of time. So this is kind of the opposite of the Thin Bloods game here.
Uh-huh.
While they are getting more actions than some of these bigger vampires, they can also cost some of the opponents the
Yeah.
god action.
This is a completely generic card. Out of time, it's kind of meaning it's sort of like, oh, hey, the sun's coming out. You don't have much time, right? So that's the theme there. But of course, the Malkavians are going to be happy to see a card like this to, keep somebody. It's really good when someone's got like 10 or 11 agenda to hit them with this, because really hard to get 3 or 4, really hard to get 3 agenda in with one action, right? So a good late game. But the reason why it's in the Thin Blood deck is after the Thin Bloods have recruited all 7 of the characters, at least in the precon deck, they will still have 9 prestige left over. So why not use some of that prestige to get a conspiracy going, and hopefully you can get some other people to contribute as well.
Nice. That's the other thing that I think is cool about Thin Blood is you're going to have a lot of prestige to play with, so you can run some schemes, you could run some conspiracies, things like that, to just have either other ways to score points or other ways to just keep the pressure on your opponents without
Right.
putting yourself into that danger zone of very, very few prestige.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, if the Thin Bloods get to that magical 3 or less, which is the danger zone, it's gonna be
Tough.
sort of easy to take them out, because just by prestige loss, because those 1-cost characters are not going to stand up. You won't have a lot of prestige to give them shields, and therefore you're not going to be able to keep them alive. You're going to have to heal them. You're going to have to, when they go into torpor, spend 1 of your prestige on them, but then it's going to come right back at the start of your next turn. But it is easy to take out those 1-cost, those 1 BP characters, and so you do want to try to stay 5 or greater on the prestige angle if you can, just so you always have that extra prestige for your defenses.
Yeah. Awesome. Is that the last? Yeah, that's the last of the unique cards in the Thin Blood precon.
Okay.
That's all in Blood and Alchemy. That's up for pre-order right now. Gonna be out looking like late, early August. I think you said.
Hopefully by a month. Let's just say it's coming out a month before Gen Con.
That's the current plan. And
Yeah.
and as far as I know, last time we checked, things are going according to plan, even as shocking as that is, given the state of global logistics. But Matt, like I said, I'm very excited about Thin Blood. I think it's a really cool theme. I think it's got some really fun, like the action advantage and having to play things in the right order to capitalize on that, and like your Sunrise Surprise, having to play things in the right order to get that third action at the right time. Like that is a fun puzzle, I think, to me. So I'm
Mhm.
psyched to play with this.
Yeah.
Out of the two, if you had to pick Tremere or Thinblood out of this box, what's your style, or what are you more excited to play?
I love them both. That's the
It's like,
crazy
which of your
part.
children is your favorite?
Um, I think what's funny is I've actually played Thin Blood more often, but the Tremere just have that little bit of trickiness, that little bit of behind the scenes goings on in the rituals that I really love. But the Thin Bloods, I ended up playing the Thin Bloods a lot just to make sure they were getting tested well
Yep, and
early
working
on, because a lot of
despite how
people
different
were,
they are.
yeah, they're very different, and so I wanted to get out there and show how it works for the playtesters. Um, some of because naturally people are going to be a little
Scared of
queasy
the
about playing such small characters, but it can pay off.
And somebody pointed out in chat, and I think you mentioned it at one point too. The other thing to remember is a one cost, for example, a one cost vampire blocks a huge attack.
Yeah.
They go to torpor, and unless it's
Hmm.
aggravated damage, they're in torpor. They pop back up the next turn,
Yeah.
so
The
they're
start at
gonna
the
mend
Yeah.
very very quickly.
Yeah, and they'll be back at the start of your next turn, actually. So I think, actually, I forget. I need to bone up on the rules
Yeah,
for it.
wouldn't it?
But
Because when somebody goes to torpor, you lose a
yeah, I
prestige, flip
suddenly,
it to
I
blood,
suddenly just had
and
mixed.
they're mended.
It's Yeah, it's. People might wonder how come I don't seem to have like the rules memorized. I do. The problem is there've been the rules have iterated a few times, and so
Yes.
sometimes I remember a rule from a year ago and go, oh wait, did we change that or not? I don't
That's a
remember.
very common thing I've
So
noticed with game
yeah.
designers, and people say, "Well, why don't you know that?" It's one, you're thinking expansion number 4 and expansion number 5. Like you're looking ahead with things, so that your brain is somewhat occupied sometimes.
Yeah.
But playtesting, if you even playtesters will sometimes have trouble remembering
Hmm.
which version of the card actually made it to the final.
Right. Right. So
Yeah, they
yeah.
can
So
they can
it's
heal very quickly. You can't keep them
yeah.
down unless
Yeah.
you are
You're not
burning
going to
them
keep them
somehow.
down. Not going to keep them down for very long. They're a two, even a two will come back with no added cards from you, and a three will come back with a single discard. So plus the
Yeah,
automatic
yep,
one mending from the general supply, right?
yeah.
So
That's
yep,
wild.
they can all come
Pretty
back super
neat.
fast. Hmm.
Awesome. Well, that's all we have for the Thin Bloods tonight. Currently, our plan is to show off Tremere next week, people. So if you're into
Hmm.
Tremere, come learn about blood sorcery and rituals and all that jazz next Wednesday. We're also working on getting together prize announcements and more format information for the Prince of the City tournament at Gen Con. And lots more goodness to come. So thanks everybody for joining us. If you're into this vampire stuff and the World of Darkness, make sure you tune in at 7:30 Pacific for the Nightlife episode 3 and see the very talented Diana D'Amico and the cast and see what's going on in the World of Darkness in sunny Miami once the sun goes
Yeah,
down.
that's coming up less than 2 hours, right?
Indeed. Everybody, thanks for
Mhm.
tuning in. Matt, thank you so much for joining us and sort
All
of
right.
diving into these cards.
Yeah, I'm
Everybody have
happy
a
to see what people are
do
gonna
with them.
talk about on Discord about them. So
There you go.
yep.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and have a great night.